First up, I want to show you some amazing examples of how the Trump Derangement Syndrome plays out in the media. Now, Trump's impeachment trial is underway in the Senate, as you know, and yet again the media is talking about a smoking gun coming from former National Security Advisor John Bolton. Have we heard this song before? Yes, we have. Almost every week, actually, for 3 years. So while the media get into a lather again, trying to kill off Donald Trump, let me show you a couple of things. First, let's look at what they really think of the people who vote for Donald Trump. Have a look at this CNN panel. They're talking about how the Secretary of State challenged a reporter to point out Ukraine on a map. And by the way, the word rube essentially means hick or bogan.
He also knows deep in his heart that Donald Trump couldn't find Ukraine on a map if you had the letter U and a picture of an actual physical crane next to it. He knows that this is, an administration defined by ignorance of the world. And so that's partly him playing to their base and playing to their audience, the credulous boomer rube demo that backs Donald Trump, that wants to think that Donald Trump's the smart one and y'all elitists are dumb.
You elitists with your geography and your maps and your spelling, even though my
your math and your reading.
Yeah, you're reading, your geography, knowing other countries, sipping your latte.
All those lines on the map.
Only them elitists know where Ukraine is. Sorry, I apologize.
But by the way, oh my God.
Isn't it funny looking at them being funny and not realising that the joke's on them? We've all heard this before, of course. It's like the whole deplorables thing in the 2016 elections. OK, so Donald Trump supporters are dumb, apparently, according to these people. They're idiots, they're rednecks, they're deplorables, just like the Brexit supporters in the UK or coalition supporters in Australia. This abuse of the mainstream, of course, is really working well for the media political class, isn't it? They're really showing us how clever they are. They remain the best assets, these people, of Donald Trump, of Boris Johnson and of the coalition here in Australia. They just don't get it. And let's look at some of the media tricks they play. This is an American example. It goes back a couple of months, but bear with me. I'll explain it for you. What happened was a United Nations expert delivered a report on children in detention. Sound familiar? And of course, he slammed, that is, the UN expert slammed the US administration.
Separating children, as was done by the Trump administration, from their parents, and even small children at the Mexican-US border, is absolutely prohibited by the Convention on the Rights of the Child. I would call it inhuman treatment for both the parents and the children.
OK, so the United Nations slams Trump and the media lap it up. That's a kind of story like man bites dog. It's dog bites man, more to the point. There's just nothing new to see there. But the United Nations man went on to portray America as the world's worst regime when it came to keeping children in detention.
The United States is one of the countries with the highest numbers. We have still more than 100,000 children in migration-related detention in the United States of America.
OK, of course, that was a story. News organisations across the world and across the US reported this amazing fact, along with the anti-Trump barbs, and they used it to criticise America and President Trump. It even got some coverage here in Australia, as we all might have expected. But there was a small problem. The UN experts' figures, as it turned out, weren't for the current year or the previous year. The figures of more than 100,000 children over a year related to 2015, when the president was, of course, that secular saint, Barack Obama. Under Trump, the number of children in detention had been cut by more than 30%. So what did the media do? Well, some of them altered their stories with the revised information. Some of them then ran stories saying the UN had made a mistake and corrected its figures. And still others, they just deleted their stories. That's right. Some of them, including large, reputable news wire services, just deleted their stories. They got rid of their false criticism of Trump. They unremembered the facts about high levels of children in detention under Barack Obama. It mattered under Trump, but it didn't matter under Obama. Or perhaps it showed that Trump was improving on Obama's record, so it shouldn't be reported. This is extraordinary stuff. This is the media playing a game of eternal sunshine of the spotless mind with Obama's legacy and showing that they will do anything they can to paint Donald Trump in a bad light and pull out all the tricks they can to avoid reporting him in a good light. Now to the tennis and bad boys and recognising champions. Last night was a big night at the Australian Open with a wonderful ceremony to recognise the unsurpassed tennis achievements of Margaret Court, 50 years after she won the Grand Slam. She was joined by Rod Laver, of course, two absolute giants of the game across all the world and across all of the game's history. Two wonderful Australian legends, and the crowd lapped it up just before they watched the current champ in Rafael Nadal forced to fight hard against Aussie Nick Kyrgios, who seems to be growing up at last. Anyway, this was all to the good because many activists want to shun Margaret Court because of her strong Christian rejection of gay marriage and homosexual practices. Now, look, I think that's all a bit old hat and intolerant, but it was the orthodoxy not so long ago, and it's got nothing to do with her tennis record. But while the crowd seemed to have moved on and they just wanted to honour Margaret Court, someone else just couldn't resist drawing attention to himself over this issue.
This year marks the 50th anniversary of Margaret Court's Grand Slam, and Tennis Australia is facing a dilemma. What do they do with their crazy aunt? They finally decided to invite her, but it came with a twist. We will recognize what she did in 1970, but we won't celebrate the person. Huh? Well, it doesn't work that way. You can't separate the person from her achievements. Look at me. If you recognize the fact I won 7 Grand Slams, guess what? Then you got to celebrate the fact that I had the loudest mouth in the history of the tennis tour.
You can't be serious, McEnroe. Look, I've got to say that John McEnroe is my favourite tennis player of all time, loudmouth and all. But his reputation for skill, for aggression and for his temper is all about his on-court behaviour. None of us care about his religious or political or other views. And that's why Margaret Court ought to be honoured right now with no qualifications for what she did on the court, for being the greatest player in her game ever. But ever the patriot, McEnroe wants that claim to be taken from her back to the United States.
Serena, do me a favour. Get 2 more Grand Slams this year and get to 25 so we could leave Margaret Court and her offensive views in the past where they both belong.
Oh, come on, John McEnroe. Let her be. Do we have to judge Serena Williams now as well on her character and religious views, or is it all about her tennis? Can't we just celebrate a great champion like Margaret Court? Do we really have to denounce someone else just to prove that we're more tolerant? And isn't that all a bit paradoxical, if not hypocritical?